So I'll convene the December 3rd, 2020 Board of Selectmen and Board of Health meeting. The first on our agenda is a COVID-19 update from our health nurse, Deb Murphy, and our health officer, John Coolin. Deb, do you want to start it off? You're muted, Deb.
All right, try it now, Deb.
Okay, thanks, Tony.
You're welcome.
So the good news is the weekly data just came in tonight, and Nahant has actually changed from yellow to green this week. The data reported for the last 2 weeks is from 11:15 to 11:28, and it has Nahant recorded as having 12 new cases during that time period. So if you remember last time, we had 21 in the 2 week period. So now we're in the green, which is good. That's where we want to be. We want to be in the green. We'd love to be back in the gray. The town right now, we have currently 5 active cases, several other close contacts that are under quarantine. I met at the school today with the school nurse and the superintendent, and the school continues to do great. They're just doing great. The school's operating, the kids are doing great. They're all in school. There's been no school transmission. I think a special letter is going to go out to the parents, just commending them for the great work they're doing, keeping the kids home if they're not feeling well. And so really kudos to the schools. The testing that we've started in Nahant, I think, has been a great success. People are very happy to have it here. Sometimes it's a little difficult for some people to access their test results because you have to click on a link and put in a password and connect to another link. But I also get all of the negative results, so people have been calling me, and I'm happy to look up their results for them and give them to them. The testing here in Nahant, the results are coming back really and truly less than 24 hours. So it's great. It's great to get the results back so timely. So I think that's about it as far as my piece is concerned. I don't know, John, do you have anything to add?
Not with regard to the testing or the cases. I would just remind the board that public health work continues during a pandemic. My work has mostly been focused on conducting inspections, as we do routinely, food establishments and housing complaint responses, nuisance complaint responses. And so COVID-19 and coronavirus discussions infiltrate all activities. And so it's necessary at times to remind people to adjust the mask, keep it over their nose, and keep the distance, and keep the separation that goes less than 6 feet to a minimum. So I think people are trying, and like anything else, people need to be reminded. Certainly you can go nowhere without being exposed to our being really in the thick of things. And although it's hopeful that a vaccine is on the horizon, it is certainly not going to be available to most of us for quite some time. So people are going to have to maintain. Folks in town running businesses still have to cope with the mandates and guidelines, and so the advice continues. And it's a challenge to keep up with the dynamic nature of the mandates and guidelines that come from the state level. But It is what we signed on for. So I try to make sure that the advice I give out is accurate. Does anybody have any questions? If not,
Yeah, I have one if I could, John, it's Gene. How often, I've been asked this, how often can somebody be tested?
There are people who, because of their the nature of their jobs, they're being tested every day, and that's certainly not necessary for the vast majority of us.
I'm sorry, I meant in town,
Just in town.
just in town.
There's no
That-
limit. There's no
No.
limit on the in-town testing. There's no limit. You can go every time it's offered.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry. Anybody else?
John, I just know that listening to the news tonight that when the vaccine does come, and it'll be a few months away, but I guess it's coming to the nursing homes and workers there first. But I understand it's going to be handled at the state level. Tony, you might want to answer this too. Are we coordinating with the state, and how will that happen when it does happen?
It's interesting you asked that because Deb Murphy and I today actually sat down for about an hour to talk about, the vaccine, what we're, getting from the state, potential distribution information that we can provide or share. There's, when I went into the meeting with Deb today, and based off of the information I'm gathering from the news, I felt like we would have a lot more information at our fingertips that we don't actually have yet. The tests from different companies are handled differently. Some are 1 dose, some are 2 dose. Some tests, there's a question of what tests could we distribute here locally? Could we use a third party like Cataldo, who's doing what vaccines could we distribute here locally? Could we use Cataldo like we're using them for the testing? That's going to be a follow-up question with Cataldo from me to them, see if it's something that they're going to be getting involved with. But the state is reaching out to local municipalities. I think the ones with the higher rates are being communicated with initially about getting involved with the distribution of the vaccine. Deb, knows a lot. Are you unmuted, Deb?
Yeah, I'm unmuted.
Jump in here.
No, I'm listening to you, and I think, everything you said is correct. There's still a lot of information that hasn't filtered down to our level yet. And I'm sure, in the upcoming weeks in our weekly meetings that I have with the other local boards of health, that it has been on the agenda and it will continue as more information becomes known. It would be great if Cataldo could, do the vaccine administration, because it would have to probably, like our flu clinic, be held outside. If the vaccine becomes available to communities, like in February or March, it could still be a little chilly outside. So, but those are the things we don't really know yet. And
We also don't want, the other thing that you brought up, Deb, in our meeting today was, with the flu vaccine, it's a 6-month
right.
Shelf life or whatever
The
call
flu
it. We don't
vaccine
know.
is good for 6 months. So you are, immunized for a 6-month period during the flu season. We don't know with the COVID vaccine, because COVID is here year round. It's not right now a seasonal virus. So we don't know, like, how long will the vaccine last, in your system? Will the vaccine need to be administered, on a monthly basis to different people in different time schedules? If you do need a two-shot vaccine, which most likely we will, then we have to keep a schedule of, when your second inoculation would be due. So there's a lot of, would be a lot of planning, and I don't think we can, there's some basics that we can get into place that I talked to Tony about today. We'd need a special refrigerator, commercial grade medical refrigerator, to hold them because of the temperatures. The different pharmaceuticals have different temperature regulations for their vaccine, and need to follow. DPH has already sent out, you need to follow very strict guidelines for the handling, the storing, the administration, the reporting of adverse events, the follow-up with all the people that receive the vaccine. So it's a big project, and remember, this vaccine has never been given before, so there's no historical data to refer back to.
Makes sense. So we'll keep it on the agenda as we move forward, as policies develop. Well, thanks again, Deb, and thanks, John. And I know, Deb, we need to get you some help, and I know Tony is working very hard on that.
Yes, he is.
Yeah. So I appreciate you sticking in with us and everything you've done. Okay. I'm going to move on to item 2, which is opening comments. Christmas tree sales. Johnson School PTO will be selling Christmas trees at the Lowlands parking lot on February from 6 to 8 p.m. on Saturdays, and on Sundays 9 to 6. Okay. Winter parking ban starts December 21st. It goes through March 20th between 12 a.m. and 6 a.m. And if anybody's requesting on-street parking, they have to work through the police station, and they can guide you through that. And finally, real estate bills were distributed on November 18th and are due December 18th. So I hope everybody can get up to speed on that. If anybody's having problems during the pandemic with that, just contact the town administrator's office, and I'm sure they'll work with you on that. So, any other opening comments, Gene or Josh?
Just quickly, I think a lot of people in town were awoken or heard a really loud plane overhead last night. I know I did. And so I just put in the chat the phone number at Massport that you can call to register those noise complaints with Massport. It's 617-561-3333. That number's in the chat. It's a voicemail, 24/7 voicemail thing, or you can go on the Massport website. But it was certainly a loud one last night.
Josh,
Yeah.
that was the lowest and loudest I've ever heard an airplane.
Same here. I thought they were going to crash. Luckily,
It seemed.
yeah, it was pretty loud. And I know, Tony, there's been some curiosity about the status of Kelly Greens and the new contract and so on. I wonder if you could give us just a 1-minute summary of that status for folks.
Sure. Our last agreement with the last lessee ended October 31st. Our golf committee put together an RFP process, went through that process. We received 2 bids. They selected R&B, which is actually Brett Waterman, who's his partner. Brett Waterman, for those who don't know, is the current head greenskeeper at the golf course. So someone who's familiar with the facility, familiar with the people, familiar with how that place is ran. So right now, Dan Scripp, our town council, is in communication with the selected bidder, council, and we're in the middle of contract negotiations. You know, we've been down there a couple times. You know, we're making sure the sprinkler system is up and running and inspected, making sure the heating system's up and running. So the town's kind of in this intermediary ownership role of making sure the building is safe and sound while we're going through the contract negotiations. The new lessee will have to apply for a new liquor license, which there is a process, a public process, a lengthy one there. And, you know, that will have an impact in as far as opening goes. But that process is in the early stages and really can't be completed or it doesn't make sense to be completed without the lease agreed upon. So a couple moving parts, but we're hoping that they'll be up and running, you know, after the turn of the year.
That was good. Thanks, Tony. I just know that a few people were curious, so thanks for that summary.
As far as, you know, I know we've had a couple nice weekends since October 31st. You know, without a current lease under the old lease, folks were at least able to maybe get some food and beverage outside under the COVID rules. But without an active lease and manager and an open kitchen, you know, there is no alcohol or food offered indoors or outdoors currently. You can still go down there and golf, but we're not able to provide any type of food or beverage. So in the meantime.
Okay, great. Thanks. Gene, any comments?
Just a quick one. I happened to read in the item where Marblehead received that $120,000 grant for IT upgrades. And I know, Tony, you've been talking about pushing along for somebody to fill that position to write grants. It would seem that would be a hell of a return on investment.
Yeah. We've applied for a couple different community compact grants that we've been able to receive. I think that, you know, over the last 2 years, we've accomplished or been awarded a number of grants. And Vicky Masson has really been our grant coordinator. So we kind of have somebody that we have pay by the hour contracted service to help us with that. You know, sometimes the grants that are out there, we are not eligible for. Sometimes they have requirements as part of the grant that, you know, we may not have an interest in. And I'll just also add at the end of that, our soon-to-be town accountant, who's actually on the call, that is in front of you guys for approval today, is coming from the town of Marblehead, and I believe worked on that grant application. So we're gaining some experience on staff as well.
Great, excellent. Hey, one other thing. I haven't even thought to check it, but has the DCR taken down that causeway sign yet? The
I don't
parking?
know. I haven't noticed it.
No, it's still flashing away.
It is. We've got to get that removed.
I don't know what that's for.
They you know, just so you know, they are still collecting fees. They don't have somebody there collecting. It's actually a kiosk that you're supposed to pay for your parking, but they rarely have anyone monitoring the cars parked in the lot. So a lot of people don't pay, but I think that's why they still have the message board up, is because they actually are still collecting fees.
Well, that's wrong. It's embarrassing, I think, to us. If people don't know who the collector is, whether it's the town of Nahant or DCR, and it's just foolish for them to have that up there. There's no reason for us not to be able to tell them to take it down.
We've put the request in.
Tony, maybe if they even put it in front of the kiosk, so it's you're not looking at it coming into town. You know, if you do turn in there to park, then as you drive into the kiosk, then you can see it if you have to.
That's
And I don't need,
a good
they don't
idea.
need one that big either, I don't think.
Yeah, it sounds like a good idea to me. It bothers me aesthetically for sure. And I've talked to Tony about this a few weeks ago, and I didn't realize that kiosk was there collecting. I've certainly gone into that parking lot a bunch of times without even noticing it. But actually, just the other day, I drove in there and looked, and I was like, "Oh yeah, there's where you're supposed to pay." But I don't think anybody ever does. So yeah, I think if you could move that sign over to that location, or give some indication that people are supposed to be paying, or a smaller sign at this location, it's just aesthetically, it's a little much.
All right,
Good.
we will reach back out to DCR tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, on the new business, we have a number of minutes to approve from previous meetings.
Yes. Uh-oh. I'm gonna have to go electronic here, sorry. Okay, testing. I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the Board of Selectmen meeting minutes from August 5th, 2020.
Seconded,
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Josh Antrim,
Gene Canty, aye.
Mark Cullen and I.
I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the Board of Selectmen meetings from August 20th, 2020.
Seconded,
Seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Josh Antrim,
Gene Canty, aye.
Mark Cullen and I.
I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the Board of Selectmen meeting minutes from September 3rd, 2020.
Seconded,
Seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Josh Antrim,
Gene Canty, aye.
Mark Cullen and I.
I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the Board of Selectmen meeting minutes from September 16th, 2020.
Seconded,
Seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Josh Antrim,
Gene Canty, aye.
Mark Cullen and I.
I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the Board of Selectmen meeting minutes from September 23rd, 2020.
Seconded,
Seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Josh Antrim,
Gene Canty, aye.
Mark Cullen and I. Next on the agenda is something that I asked Tony, I think probably all three of us asked you individually to put on the agenda, but it's duck hunting season again. I sent along one of our residents sent some pictures that were very disturbing of dead ducks washing up on the beach, shotgun shells washing up on the beach. Pretty disturbing pictures. I know this is a state law. I know that the town can't prevent it, but I think it's time to begin thinking about at least sending a message and possibly looking at a town bylaw that may extend the limits in which they can hunt. And with that, maybe next duck season, we could have maybe the police department make sure that when the duck hunters are launching their boats, and I presume they're launching them at the DCR site, that they meet them in the morning and just let them know that there is a new bylaw in town and whatever that may be. But I do think we have to take some sort of action here. I know that Town Council Dan Script, you've been looking into this too, but do you want to give us an update on this? Tony, can you post those pictures so people can see them?
Yeah, let me try to find them in my email here. But
I just want people to realize that we're not. This is something that's really. I mean, not just the noise itself. It 5 o'clock in the morning shaking you out of bed. But you know, the mess that it's leaving, and you know, the plastics and the shotgun shells floating around, not good.
Tony, I don't think we have to show the pictures of those ducks in the event that the kid's looking at the TV monitor.
Shotgun shells and stuff.
Shotgun shell's fine.
I mean, I think this is, I mean, hunting is a protected activity, but certainly from the perspective of public safety, we have the right and responsibility to ensure public safety in Nahant and in its water. So, you know, I think when the current bylaw dictates a 300-yard distance from shore, but probably when that bylaw was created at this time of year, duck hunting season, the only people out on the water were some lobstermen, right, in highly visible boats. But now we have people surfing year-round in Short Beach and Long Beach. We have kiteboard sailors. We have people on motorized hydrofoils. So things are a little different now. And from a public safety perspective, I think that 300-yard boundary should be, firearms discharge limit should be pushed outward in light of the year-round activities of other recreational, you know, people enjoying other recreational activities. So we should do this from a public safety perspective, I think, and that's within our own purview within the town's bylaws.
Hey, Tony, in a conversation we had, you had mentioned that there was some federal or state statute that apparently sets up a parallel line with the seashore 3 miles out.
Yeah, so I'm showing a picture of a resident sent a picture in of some of the material collected on the beach that's washing up along shore, which is obviously a part of this issue. Sound is another issue, and when we're looking at this entirely, there's a couple. We're looking at what is what falls under the town's jurisdiction. Local ordinance options. How far does our jurisdiction reach? What is the state law as far as how close the hunters can be to our coastline? And then, obviously there's an enforcement arm. With any change to any proposal in policy, there's an enforcement arm to it. And, we're looking at that as well, keeping that in mind as well. And then, of course, there's education, like Mr. Chairman brought up, whether that be our police officers at the local ramps or signage of some sort. So when it comes to bird hunting season, depending on the species and depending on what you're hunting with, where you are in the state, how old you are, there's youth hunting weeks. Generally speaking, the season goes from October to February. State law says that you have to be 500 feet from a house or a roadway. 500 feet may sound like a lot, but it isn't. It's really only about, 150 yards. You're talking about, like the first hole at Kelly Greens. So it's not far. That being said, our local ordinance that we already have says that you cannot be closer than 300 yards or 900 feet from the coastline. You cannot discharge a firearm within 900 feet of our coastline. One thing that Dan, our town council, has made clear that local ordinances that have been challenged at the state level in the past that are specific to hunting or prevention of hunting have been deemed unconstitutional according to the state constitution. So we have to be careful with that language and that it be a limit on the discharge of firearms in general, which we don't allow anywhere in town. And of course, like I said, within 900 feet of the coastline. So we thought, how can we expand that? How can we push it further away from the coastline, get the hunters further away from the edge of the town? And obviously the next question to Dan was, well, where is how far out does the town's jurisdiction go? Dan discovered, looking at state law, that our seaward coastlines, our jurisdiction goes 3 miles off. Landward is, you were looking into that, Dan.
Right. Yeah. The open. Imagine East Point. You look out beyond East Point, you see nothing but open ocean for the most part, and that's pretty clear. Our boundary is coincident with what's called the Commonwealth marine boundary, which is 3 miles. But it's a little different when you're looking at Doggy Beach, looking over into Revere, maybe into Lynn. When you're looking over a harbor or a bay, it's much more difficult to determine where that line is, and that's what we're following up with now. I've been in touch with the Attorney General's office. I reached out to Revere and Lynn, so we're going to have an answer. It just might take a little more digging to get it.
So the idea would be to propose a change to the local ordinance that's within our jurisdiction and have it presented as a town meeting article. Should that pass, we still would have, I think it's, how we enforce that's going to be another issue. We take our harbor master boat out of the water in the winter time and winterize it and really only launch it if somebody is, in a medical emergency of some sort. We can obviously speak over a loudspeaker from the roadway. The police officers can do that and use signage. We can ask the environmental police to help patrol the waters in those areas, and things of that nature. That would come after a potential passing of a town meeting article.
Yeah, I would certainly advocate for the Board of Selectmen sponsoring an article for the next town meeting. There's a few things to work out. Dan and I were talking earlier about that definition of shore. For example, at Short Beach Cove, high tide and low tide shore make a big difference in terms of how close to houses you could be. So a few things to work out, but I certainly hope we can sponsor a bylaw change at the next town meeting.
I'm with that.
I'm with that too. Dan, so you and Tony will work on that for us?
We had a lot of discussion over it, and to make sure that we're on the right base, once we get something in draft form, we will affirmatively share it with the Attorney General before town meeting to make sure that we have our ducks in a row, no pun intended, and also share it with Mass Wildlife to make sure they have no issue with it as well. So we're well along the way of discussions, and we're going to be set up well when it comes to town meeting in terms of firing discharge. It has nothing to do with duck hunting. We have to keep that in mind. This is all about, as Josh mentioned, public safety, and as Mark mentioned earlier, duck hunting is state law, as someone in the chat rightly mentioned. But firearm discharge is a public safety issue, and the town has all kinds of rights with regard to the protection of its citizens and visitors.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Tony. Look forward to looking that over once you get some drafts. Appreciate it. Okay, we got a big item here on 2C. Approve appointment of finance director, town accountant. So, Tony, want to give us a update on this?
Yes, I'm gonna unmute Allison, who's on the camera on the Zoom meeting with us. So as you know, Deb Waters, who has been with the town for 26 years, I believe the first female accountant in the county. has been, dedicated to the community for so long, and she's announced her retirement. And we are so grateful for everything that she's done. With that, we posted her position, and received a number of applications, and have, Deb and I feel very, excited and are happy to present to you Allison, as our final selection, for your approval to appoint her as the town accountant and finance director. Allison has many years of accounting experience, and has many years specifically to municipal accounting experience, and a wealth of far-reaching roles at her previous position as the finance director and town accountant in town of Marblehead, expanding, beyond just town accountant, but also overseeing some HR functions like payroll, overseeing some financial forecasting, some capital planning, some financial policy making, and a number of other things. And I think she's going to be a great fit. And she's on the call here. And if any of you, Mr. Chairman, or any of the other selectmen want to ask her any questions or allow her a moment to introduce herself, I would appreciate that.
Yeah, well, why don't you introduce yourself, Allison? I do have a few questions.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm very excited for the opportunity. I currently serve as the finance director and town accountant for the town of Marblehead. I've been there for 5.5 years. And as Tony said, I currently oversee the payroll office, accounting, and treasurer's office operations there, as well as we have our own retirement board that I serve on. I'm very involved in the budget process for the town, capital planning. I'm also responsible for IT in the town, so I have a little bit of IT background. But I'm very excited for the opportunity in Nahant. I grew up in Nahant. My maiden name is MacDonald. I grew up on Greystone Road. So I'm very passionate about the town, and I think it's a great opportunity that I'm very excited for.
Well, thank you, Allison. Thank you for stepping in. I looked at your resume. I had a long conversation with the current town accountant, and she is very excited and about your coming on board. And so am I. And I didn't realize until recently that you did grow up in Nahant. And now that I see you in person or on Zoom, you look like a perfect combination between your mother and father.
Everyone says I look more like my mom, but a little bit of both.
Yeah, well, I think you bring the type of experience. I mean, the multiple disciplines that you bring in terms of capital planning and IT. I also noticed that you were in charge of the health benefits for the town of Marblehead, which is very important. So, when you come to Nahant, you wear many different hats, and I think that you have all of them in your closet. So,
Yeah.
I'm excited about you coming on board, and
Thank you.
And
I do want to say, Mr. Canty was speaking before about that IT grant. I did write that grant for the town of Marblehead. So I've written various grants. I'm happy to do so in the town of Nahant when the opportunity comes along. I have a lot of experience in that as well.
That's great. And I understand that you have a new baby.
I do. So I have, I'm sorry.
Maybe I'd get your mother and father to join my puppet daycare with me. And
there you go. So they have the baby on Wednesdays and Thursdays. His name's Gabriel. He's 8 months old. He was born the day that the state shut down for COVID. I was in Beverly Hospital giving birth. He's great. He's my first son. My husband and I are having so much fun. Really looking forward to celebrating Christmas, his first Christmas. My husband bought a Santa suit since I don't think we're going to be seeing a Santa anywhere. So at least get a picture with, some kind of Santa. But yes, it's been great. My parents are super helpful And being in Nahant, if I'm appointed to this position, will just be make my life a lot easier.
Josh or Jean?
Hey, congratulations, Allison. It's hard to believe that little girl down the street is now the finance director.
Thank you.
That's great.
Yeah, that just quickly, when Tony called and, said, we had your resume and application, as I told Tony at the time, and actually I think I told you too, Allison, when we spoke, I was a little bit concerned, are we just sort of grabbing the first decent looking candidate that comes along? And after looking everything over and talking to you and Tony described the conversation you all had with Debbie, it was like, just a perfect fit. I think that we're so lucky, you're just exactly what we were looking for. So, we got lucky that you happened to grow up on Greystone Road, but
Yes.
we're not going to hold that against you. I think we're fortunate to have you. So
That side of town is starting to gain a lot of power.
yeah.
If you have any questions too, you can always walk across the street and ask the old town treasurer, the retired town treasurer, for her advice too. So,
I'm glad, everything you guys said there, obviously Allison's Nahant connection is another asset, I think, where, understanding the community, understanding the people, understanding, what the priorities are, where we are unique, where, I think the experience she's bringing from Marblehead and those procedures that they have there, and the way that she has managed their finances is going to bringing that here to the town of Nahant is something that, if it wasn't for her connection in Nahant, we probably would be looking at, appointing someone with less experience, or trying to take the next step up, or use this as a leap, a leaping pad to another position. And I can just say that I'm so excited about Allison bringing that experience to the town. And I know she has that natural instinct and commitment to the community. So, we're really excited to have her as part of the team.
Thank you, Tony. I'm really excited to work with all of you as well.
that's great. Josh,
Yeah, no, nothing more. Just
how about a motion?
oh yeah, I do have a motion to make. Scroll up. I move that the Board of Selectmen approve the appointment of Allison Nieto. Did I say that right?
Nieto.
Nieto to the Finance Director / Town Accountant position.
Seconded.
Motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Josh Antrim, aye.
Gene Canty, aye.
Mark Cullen and I. Just one question I should have. When do you start?
So I'm on contract in Marblehead, and per my contract, I'm to give 30 days notice, which I'm doing starting tomorrow. So my last day in Marblehead will be January 1st, and I plan on being in Nahant right after that.
All right, well, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Say hi to your mom and dad for me, please.
I will do.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. That was a good catch, Tony.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like I said there, it's, we don't have the ability to compete with some of these other communities who are offering these positions at, $10, $20, $30,000 more. So, to get a $10, $20,000 more candidate in qualifications willing to come here for a lower, for our scale, because of that Nahant connection. I mean, we're just hitting it out of the park. So thank you for approving the appointment.
Yeah, that's great. Look forward to meeting you, Allison. Okay, ongoing business, preserving East Point, continued discussion. I don't have anything. I'm sure Tony was still waiting for the RKG report. Any word on that?
I haven't gotten an update on the timing of that. I'd say the latest is the the change to chapter 53 that we talked about.
Yeah.
Jeff Blake and I drafted a letter to the Secretary of Housing and Economic Development asking for an exception and more time.
Mhm.
Just given, and really laid out 1,600 signatures, 500 people or more at the one town meeting, 400 at another, hundreds of people at public meetings, and just the general attention that this issue gathers. And it's not a housing project, which we believe is the intent of the change to the chapter 53. So we're eagerly awaiting that response.
Good. And on the chapter 53, I know the Concom, the notice of intent is coming up. Should we not get the extension on the chapter 53, and we have to go through that process through Zoom? I'm sure, I believe we're going to be asking Northeastern, or the Conservation Commission will be asking Northeastern for peer review, correct? Assistance?
Yes. Yes.
All right.
Hey, Tony,
Yes.
could we get some sort of a outline of what the timing is for the different permitting with each board? Just so we have an idea of what will happen when a permit gets filed, now that that's open.
Yeah. So do you want me to run through it right now, or do you want, you want something written out or provided at the next meeting? I can go over it briefly right now.
If you want.
Um,
Mark, is that okay?
Yeah, I mean, there's a sequencing of permits, so it might be better to give them some time to put it down, because they're going to have to go through Conservation Commission. They're going to have to go through the Planning Board for site review. Then, if after going through all of them, they have to go to, and depending on appeals on either one of those, then they'd have to go to the building inspector and perhaps and probably the zoning board of appeals. So there's a lot of things that run together that are dependent upon one another. But it might be, Tony could probably put
changes. It kind of changes based on what direction it goes in. It's kind of like a flow chart in a sense. So
it would be a flow chart. That'd be great if you could put that together. It certainly would give us an idea of what direction we're going in time-wise.
Sure, you can do that, Tony, can't you?
yeah, I think we could put something like that together.
Okay.
I think that generally speaking, you're talking about anywhere from, I don't know, 3 or 4 to 6 or 7 months, somewhere in that span. Of course,
Yeah.
It depends on if we
appeal.
get the exception, what type of appeal process it goes through, and if it were to get to like a court level, obviously we have no idea how long that would take. So there's a number of variables there, but yeah, we could try to put something together.
Yeah, Mark's idea is a good one. Let's do a flow chart and we can all have it, and we'll all be able to work off of it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. I just noticed, hold on,
Yeah, I don't have the scope. I don't really have the scope in front of me either. But essentially, yeah, it's a financial impact assessment of, based on the filings that Northeastern submitted to MEPA, so their ENFs and the data that they provided there with, how many cars, how many people, how much water flow, sewer flow, things of that nature. So that's the type of study that they're looking at is, what the impact of the development would be on the community.
Okay.
I'd just like to add something to that, which is, this financial assessment is really a requirement, right? So regardless of where you stand on Northeastern's planned expansion, it's clear that the long-term implications to the town are in the millions of dollars, right? So when we have any discussions with Northeastern or the townspeople are asked to vote on eminent domain or whatever it may be, the voters, the Board of Selectmen, the town administrator, we really need to be armed with this information to make an informed decision on any discussions or votes. So this is a requirement really from my point of view to do the job right, to have discussions or negotiations without this information, I think is not a responsible approach.
I would agree, Josh, and the request for this report was made by the Finance Committee, and I think they're doing their due diligence and making sure that they understand it as well. Okay. Any other discussions on East Point?
Well, there's another chat from Ken Carangelo saying, would this report take the place of the second statement from the Board of Selectmen? So, my view on that would not take the place of, but it would supplement. In other words, I assume we'd issue a revision to that statement, including this assessment as well as the recent real estate appraisal. I think that would be appropriate to update that second statement with the latest information.
We do plan on having our eminent domain attorney and town council, KP Law, on for a public sort of hearing, a Zoom hearing on eminent domain and what the process is. Probably sometime after the holidays, early to mid-January. Okay.
Just so you,
That'd be great.
Mark, you and Jean know, I did email Mr. Masterman and Jeff Blake about their availability. I mentioned January 21st as a possible date, just as a possible date, because that's our regularly scheduled Board of Selectmen meeting. So
Okay, great.
we can coordinate through Tony, but just so you know, I did mention that date to them, and Jeff Blake anyway said that he would make sure he could support that date.
Okay, great.
There's another question in there, Mr. Chairman.
Okay,
Alice Court
okay.
says Governor Baker just changed the timing range for board reviews as of this week, stating 45 days from this week. This will affect all boards and commissions, I believe. Can you comment on that, please? So that is the Chapter 53 of the Acts of 2020 that I was referring to. Originally, when Chapter 53 was passed earlier this year, it said 45 days from the after the state of emergency is lifted. And then in the last month, the legislature passed a supplemental budget, and as an outside section, they amended Chapter 53, stating that if any permits or reviews were submitted, I want to say it was after March, after a certain date in March, which the Northeastern NOIs were. You have to begin your process December 1st. So, those NOIs submitted to the Concom at different dates, according to the new law, Concom would have to begin the process of hearing those NOIs or reviewing those NOIs starting December 1st. However, that new law also allowed for the Secretary of Housing and Economic Development to provide exception. So that's what we've written a letter to the Secretary requesting that. Alice, I hope that answered your question. I got a thank you, so I think it did.
Great, thanks, Tony. All right, next on the agenda is public shade tree discussion. There we go, Dan.
Okay, so we've been looking at what is and what is not a public shade tree. Okay, first of all, a public shade tree is anything on a town way or on its borders. For the most part, that excludes, at least as of now, excludes trees inside of a public park, for example, or on the lawn of town hall. Public shade trees are specially protected in order to do just what the name implies. It provides shade to folks walking up and down public ways, and some aesthetic value, not to mention protection from the sun and also erosion, things of that nature. So they're especially protected, but it becomes a bit foggy when we're talking about trees that are on the border of a private property and a public way. Happens all the time. It happens frequently on Valley Road. So the question became, well, what's the status of that? So we've determined that it's a public shade tree, but there are a lot of times when it's very unclear as to where that particular line is. So a lot of folks in town hall don't really have a plot plan to determine where exactly the barrier is. So we have to come up with some sort of policy to make that decision. And it seems to me that as of now, in the absence of any definitive proof that a public shade tree or of a particular line, if a public shade tree is at least encroaching upon the paved path, whether it be a sidewalk or a roadway, then we can assume it's a public shade tree. And the way the statute is set up, if it's vague, then it's assumed to be a public shade tree. So we're really just following suit with what the legislature has already rendered. So then that's one question. The second question comes, okay, fine. Well, whose responsibility is it to prune and trim a public shade tree? And then, again, the answer is easy when it's all completely on a public way, because that would fall upon the town. But if that public shade tree is dividing a private and public property, well, then you have a circumstance where half the tree and half of its limbs, ostensibly, are reaching over a public way, whereas the remainder, maybe even 90%, are reaching over public property. And it just didn't make logical and to an extent legal sense to have the DPW out there trimming trees that do nothing but trimming branches that do nothing but reach over someone's house from their own property. So looking at the case law and looking at the statutes, we came up with an idea that we would, on a case-by-case basis, pursuant to a prompting from a particular resident homeowner, we would look at the particular situation, make a written determination as to whether it's a public shade tree, and if it divides a public and private property, well, then it would be the resident or the homeowner's responsibility to trim or prune the branches that reach over their own property and serve no benefit to the town, but yet it would be the town's responsibility to trim and prune those branches that reach over a public way. That is consistent with state law and not to mention the state constitution when dealing with municipal funds, which really should not be used for solely a private benefit. So taking in light those considerations, we can have, what really could be a joint letter from Town Hall and Mark Carboni, our tree warden. Number one, declaring it's a public shade tree for those trees that are unclear. Number two, also providing written permission for that homeowner, to the extent they might think it's required, to prune or trim those trees, but not tear it down. That's a whole other ballgame. So we're not going to really get into that. We're just talking about trimming and pruning. So that's where we are right now. And Mark and I have spoken about this extensively, and so have Tony and I. So that's where we are.
Hey, that sounds good. So there could be sort of a process or an application process from homeowners who have a question, and there could be some form letters that the tree warden could prepare and send out, and that could begin the process of either maintaining or taking down a tree.
Absolutely. And Alice Court was great in that she, and I know her name just popped up because she knows I'm looking at her. We literally unearthed, she had a surveyor previously unearthed some markers on her property, and we went back out there and shaked away the leaves and dirt, and we found the markers that, in her case, definitively show that one or two trees are bisecting the line and one or two trees aren't. So to the extent there are folks out there that can unearth those markers that might have been there for 100, 200 years, that'll be very helpful.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you, Dan, for all the research, and I know Alice. Thank you for helping out and working with the town on this. We've learned a lot. Thanks, Tony. Okay. Town administrator's report, Tony.
There's another question there in the chat regarding the trees.
Okay. Go ahead.
Question is, what if the trees are totally unstable and seem inevitable to fall on a house, as has happened already at 52 Valley Road?
Mhm.
And please put 54 Valley Road on the list of review. Dan, do you want to take that question?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I don't know the particulars regarding 54 Valley or even 52 for that matter. But generally speaking, a healthy tree, okay, so let's back up. The person that's responsible for a tree is responsible for it falling only if it's in some way a defective tree, a sick tree that the homeowner knew or should have known, or in some cases the town knew or should have known was unhealthy. So that's clear. The part that's kind of hard to swallow is if that healthy tree falls over a property line onto the neighbor's house, that's an act of God, and it has happened. I know we had that situation not long ago regarding solar panels up by the police station. But in any case, that's an act of God, and it's actually called the Massachusetts rule, according to the SJC. So if a tree is healthy, it falls on neighbor's property. It's not the homeowners owns the tree. It's not their responsibility. And you can look at that, unfortunately, or not, but that's just the way it is. Now, I know, I don't know DJ Dever J, I don't know who that is, but so when you use the word unstable, I'm not quite sure what that means. If you're saying the tree is sick, well, that's one thing, and that needs to be dealt with. If it's not sick, well, then that's a whole other ballgame. So, but I'm not quite sure what you mean by unstable. Again, I don't know. I'm looking at the tree was totally unhealthy that fell on 52 Valley. Well,
Let's not get in the back. Let's not get in the back and forth with the.
Agreed. Yeah, there's
that. If you have a tree that you think is town owned and are concerned that it's unhealthy and needs to be removed or trimmed, or that it's going to somehow negatively impact your property, reach out to the town hall and we'll have the town tree warden take a look at it. And I think that I believe that occurred with the tree that recently fell down at Valley Road, and it was deemed a healthy tree at the time when it was reviewed.
Well, there's a lot of times these trees fall and you don't see the cavitation until a tree is over. Happens all the time.
Right.
So that's just part of
But
the.
we'll definitely address, obviously, if you think there's a town-owned tree on your property or near your property or needs work or you want it to be removed, we'll have the tree warden take a look at it.
Okay. Anything else, Tony, on the town? Oh, we haven't gone to
Oh,
the town. Go ahead.
Just an update on the Nahant Road and Howe Road gas main work. The goal of National Grid is to have all the work completed by December 22nd on Nahant Road. The new main should have been gassed in today. They have approximately 20 services and 7 main tie-ins to complete. There's 2 crews working on that job. So hopefully that is repaired or completed, by the end of the month. And we've talked to them about, temporary patching or, there's other work that we may be doing on Nahant Road in the coming year. We had Nahant Road pegged for some repaving anyways. So we're just going to work with them on, the repaving of the areas that they cut up, whether it just be temporarily patched, whether they give us funds for a mill and overlay that can be contributed to something that we had planned in the future. Howe Road, we're still working on Howe Road. Well, we aren't, they are. It seems to be moving certainly slower, but we should get an update on that. In the next day or two. I also, as far as like street lights went, we have every street light now has been converted. There are a few street lights that need to be rewired or arms that need to be installed. And then certainly we've had some concerns or comments reached from residents about shining direct into their homes. So we've identified those as places for shields to be installed. So the shields are probably 3 weeks out before we get them. And so what we'll do at that time, we'll have the contractor come back. Once we get the shields, we'll have the contractor come back, handle all the punch list items and install the shields, where we believe they need to be placed. It seems like people are adjusting to them a little bit more. We haven't gotten as many complaints in the past few weeks. And as far as like when I'm leaving the town hall, it doesn't seem, it's not as, I'm a little bit more used to it myself as well, leaving town at night. But we're hopefully we'll have the shields within the next couple weeks. And I already handled the golf course update, so that's all I have.
And the only thing, Tony, if you could get to the board over the next week or so, a schedule for a budget review this year, just so that we know what's coming up, what's got to be reviewed, if there's a need to meet with any departments or anything like that. But probably want to get that to the finance committee too, so they understand what the schedule is going to be.
Yep, that's usually something that we send out in the next 2 weeks or so.
Yeah, okay. Sounds good. Let's see what else we got. Citizens Forum.
Let me see here. Let me see if I can allow participants. Okay, I've enabled participants to unmute themselves. So if you are logged in here and care to contribute to Citizens Forum, you can unmute yourself on your end and announce your name and address.
There are some chats here from CJ Duncan.
Yes, that's me, CJ Duncan, 26 Prospect Street. And I would like to know why Nahant wants to change the duck hunting ordinance that's already in effect.
So I'll take a first stab at that. We're not changing the duck hunting ordinance. We're changing, the proposal would be to let the town vote on changing firearms discharge limits off the shore.
How far offshore are you thinking?
Well, we haven't written a warrant article yet, but so that would be to be determined, but presumably something greater than the current 300 yards.
With the effective range of a shotgun shell, why does it matter if it's 300 yards or 150 yards?
I think because there could be people there. Same reason you can't hunt on the golf course. If the shotgun, it's a matter of protecting people other than hunters that may be within X yards of the shore. I think I mentioned surfers that are out there year round now, kiteboarders, even scuba divers. So it's those concerns.
So what, are you planning on having a minimum distance from them to be from shore as well? Because they're both recreational activities.
The bylaw we're talking about is discharge of firearms.
And what jurisdiction does the town of Nahant have over Broad Sound?
We're still trying to figure it out where the town's boundary lies. So that's something we're trying to figure out. We're working with the towns around us to try to figure out where the line exists.
There's, Dan, there's some USGS mapping that's in the town hall, I believe.
Yeah, I saw that.
And the harbor, it basically bisects the Lynn Harbor,
Yeah,
the town boundary. Runs right down the middle of it.
that's what I figured, but I want to make sure we are solid if we're challenged.
So the town wants to limit something that I've done there for 20 plus years. Friends of mine have done there for 60 plus years for noise. It has nothing to do with firearm discharge. It has to do with people complaining about the noise. And the decibel level is nowhere near what the maximum allowable is by the town.
Well, it's not
So
about
I'm just-
noise. It's not about noise, DJ. It's not about noise. It's about public safety. So, if the reliance is noise, then you have a great point. Noise can't be a reason to prohibit discharge. It's a public safety issue.
Whenever a duck hunter is out there in December and January, there isn't a soul out there.
So then you should rally the duck hunters and then come to town meeting and speak your piece with regard to why the bylaw should not be passed, and you'll be heard.
Okay. So it's going to be in the town meeting next year.
Well, who knows? It's got to go through town meeting. It has to. That's a requirement. So everyone will have a chance to be heard. Which town meeting? I don't know. It'll be on whatever warrant is appropriate, but you can bet there'll be discussions leading up to it. It won't be a surprise to anyone.
Right. Because I'm just trying to go with the ordinances from the state, from Mass General Law, and how Nahant can supersede that. And I don't understand how Nahant can supersede a Mass General Law.
It's not. It's working in conjunction with Mass General Law. The bylaw, again, it's regarding discharging firearms. It's not particularly hunting. You are right. And Rivera tried to do this, I think, not long ago, as Josh and I mentioned earlier, or discussed before the meeting. The town can't go and say you can't hunt for anything X. You can't hunt for anything. because that's, as you mentioned, regulated by the state. But when it comes to public safety, the Supreme Judicial Court has ruled that our home rule powers do allow us to take care of our residents and visitors.
I think you mentioned, Dan, that any bylaw change that Nahant makes does get reviewed by the Attorney General's office. So we can't arbitrarily make bylaw changes that are not that conflict with state law, right?
Oh, absolutely. Actually, to that end, Josh, the AG's office shot down within the past 2 years a bylaw trying to regulate hunting. I want to say it was like Wellesley or one of those W towns out there somewhere. So that's an example as to how the state is right on it. In
But
terms
you
of
said
protecting
earlier, Dan,
states'
Dan,
rights.
you said earlier that the draft article you would send to the AG's office for review prior to the vote.
Oh, yeah. Once we have it drafted, we haven't even come close to that yet. This is still in the discussion phase. But once the draft is done, my policy is always to send it to those guys in that office to make sure that they're not surprised when it does come through after town meeting, if it's passed.
Mhm.
But also to get some confidence that it's going to be approved once it gets there. And there are times when the AG throws it back and says, no, you got to change this, you got to change that. Or we're just going to knock it down once it comes to us after town meeting. So it's a back and forth. And if someone wanted to write to the AG's office and say this is why it shouldn't be passed, it shouldn't be approved after it's voted in town meeting, there is that opportunity too. It has happened, as we've seen in the past year or two with Northeastern.
Very good.
Okay,
Yeah.
Long
so,
process. Nothing will happen immediately.
so all future discussion is going to be selectmen town meeting, or is it going to be the general town meeting?
So any vote on a change to a local bylaw ordinance has to be done at town meeting, which is scheduled for May. What I think you're hearing from Dan is the Board of Selectmen are in the process of considering an article to be presented at the next town meeting that would extend the prohibition of discharge of firearms beyond the 300-yard limit that's currently in place. So if the Board of Selectmen, want to move forward with presenting an article, or, a resident can do the same through citizen petition or through a board or committee, it would be presented at town meeting for an official vote. There will likely be additional conversation about that prior to town meeting here in Board of Selectmen meetings, but the Board of Selectmen don't have the power to change that local ordinance on their own. It needs a town meeting vote.
Is there a way for a citizen of Nahant to talk to the town solicitor and discuss this, or is it just through the town selectmen meeting that it can be done?
You could certainly
yeah.
write in comments to town administrator and address it to the town Board of Selectmen, town administrator, and town council. We'd certainly review anything that you would have to say, but our discussions will be public during our public sessions, and obviously town meeting will be open to town residents.
Okay, that's fair.
Hey, CJ,
Yes.
Gene Canty. The one thing here is, apart from noise, I think that hunters, like anybody else, have a responsibility to the environment. And, somehow these ducks winding up on the beach and shotgun shells, I think plays as much a role in how things are policed and how these things are worked out.
Correct. But as you know, and I know, in every situation, there are bad actors and good. And
Exactly.
don't want the bad actors taking away from the good.
I
So we
agree.
try to police ourselves, and the worst bad actor has passed away and isn't guiding duck hunters anymore off of Nahant. So what you're hearing now are local hunters and not mostly guide hunters anymore.
Well, if you can do anything, pass the word to police their activities.
Correct. I'm in contact with the police department every time I go out.
I will say, CJ, I've had many conversations with Chief Dwyer of our police station, and he has mentioned you and has said that he's already seen an improvement from previous year to this year. So I'm sure the select will be more than happy to sit down and talk to you more about what happens on the ground.
Right.
And we appreciate you working with the local PD.
Yep, they've always been good to me, and I appreciate that.
Okay,
And I
great.
thank you for letting me speak at the meeting. I appreciate that as well.
Thank you, CJ. Okay, any other things? Anybody else? Okay, anything in the chat?
Anything else in the chat here?
I'm not seeing other things in the chat. I don't know if they're going directly to you,
No,
John.
I don't see any more.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, no, I don't see it. Okay, if that's the case, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move.
Motion to adjourn made.
Seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Josh Antrim, aye.
Gene Canty, aye.
Mark Cullen, aye. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.